This is the Northwest Coordination Center Predictive Services Climate and Significant Fire Potential Outlook issued on Thursday, September 1st, 2022. Let's verify the temperature and precipitation forecast for the previous month. The left frame shows the August temperature outlook for the United States issued by the Climate Prediction Center at the end of July. We can see much of the United States was anticipated to be at best risk of above average temperatures for August as a whole, with some exceptions. Northern Minnesota and the western part of the Great Lakes, equal chances, and the desert southwest, the Four Corners region, either equal chances or below normal temperatures anticipated. The right frame shows what actually showed up in August as a departure from what normally shows up in August in terms of the month-long temperature. So we can see for the Pacific Northwest and much of the western states, above average temperatures was solidly the rule. That's true for California, the northern Great Basin, the northern Rockies, and the Pacific Northwest, especially inland east of the Cascades. Near the coast, a few spots near average temperatures, but by and large for the Pacific Northwest as a whole, above average temperatures were observed after a relatively cool start to the month. Now here's the same for rainfall accumulated during August of 2022. The left frame shows the August precipitation outlook issued by the Climate Prediction Center at the end of July. And for much of the Pacific Northwest, equal chances was given as the most likely scenario for the Pacific Northwest, with the exception of northwestern Washington, which was judged to be in a below average precipitation likelihood for the month as a whole. Above average precipitation solidly foreseen for the desert southwest and the Four Corners region. So much of the Pacific Northwest, no forecast was being given owing to the uncertainty that Climate Prediction Center forecasters had for the month as a whole. Now the right frame shows what actually showed up for precipitation in August of 2022 as a percentage of what normally falls in August. As we can see, for much of the Great Basin, Southern California, sections of south central and southeastern Oregon, sections of eastern and southeastern Washington, precipitation accumulated well above average for August as a whole. Elsewhere in the Pacific Northwest, it was quite dry with very little precipitation being observed for the month as a whole. The precipitation that did show up in south central and southeast Oregon as well as eastern Washington came from rounds of wet thunderstorms from two plumes of moisture that drifted northward over the geographic area during early part and the middle part of the month of August. U.S. Drought Monitor, the left frame, shows what the drought monitor looked like for the western states at the end of March of 2022. So we can see there was solid drought for just about all of Oregon and all of eastern Washington, with the exceptions being no drought in northwest Oregon and western Washington. The right frame shows how things have evolved up to August 25th, 2022, and the drought designations have been alleviated or eased for sections of eastern Washington and also for northeastern Oregon. The area of no drought designation for northwest Oregon expanded from what we saw earlier in the year. So the characterization drought has been reduced in much of eastern Washington and in sections of northeastern Oregon, and that's good news for us. Still, central Oregon still has plenty of areas of severe to exceptional drought. That's also true for sections of southwest Oregon as well. The U.S. Drought Outlook issued at the end of August of 2022. Much of the state of Washington and northern part of Oregon, no changes anticipated or no severe drought anticipated, and we're anticipating that drought will persist over sections of central, southeastern, and southwestern Oregon, as well as just about all of California and the northern part of the Great Basin. So we can see that drought removal or drought improvement is likely over much of the desert southwest. The August 2022 lightning summary for the northwest geographic area, that's both Oregon and Washington combined, for August of 2022, Northwest Coordination Center tabulated 23,371 strikes. That's a little above average, the first time in quite a while, 118% of the average that was calculated from 2000 to 2021. The biggest lightning day in the region came during the 24-hour period August 9th to August 10th, were 4,058 strikes. were counted by NWCC. That was part of a series of several days with heavy lightning activity. Fire danger index values observed as of the end of August of 2022. The left frame shows energy release component values for NFDRS version 4 fuel model Y. That's the timber fuel model. And we can see the most severe, relatively speaking, is western Washington and northwest Oregon, where we can see that energy release component values are in the 95th percentile levels. Elsewhere across the Pacific Northwest, energy release component values are at lower percentile levels, particularly northeastern Washington and to some extent southeastern Oregon as well. Right frame shows 1,000-hour fuel moisture values for NFDRS version 4, again as of August 31st, 2022. And relatively speaking, western Washington, northwest Oregon are the driest in terms of heavy fuels, although we see some dry values over southeastern and northeastern Oregon as well. Relatively speaking, northeastern Washington and southwestern Oregon aren't in as relatively severe conditions in terms of NFDRS indices as of the end of August. The NWCC 2022 fire summary for August of 2022 are preliminary figures for fires and acres burned for the Northwest geographic area. That's Oregon and Washington combined. NWCC tabulated 1,216 wildfires, accounting for 116,216 acres burned. In terms of the numbers of fires, that's 106% of the average number of fires for August, but only 40% of the average number of acres burned for August. Again, those fire statistics go back from 2000 to 2021 for both Oregon and Washington. What's the status of La Nina? The El Nino Southern Oscillation Alert System status, we remain in a La Nina advisory. At this point, La Nina is strengthening and is expected to continue, with the chances for La Nina continuing gradually decreasing from 86% in autumn of 2022 to 60% during the period December through February 2022 to 2023. The graphic shows sea surface temperature anomalies over the Central Pacific Basin. As we can see in the El Nino reporting areas, there is a solid area of cooler than typical sea surface temperature values that has been persistent from 2022, and we're seeing some areas strengthening in the last few months. So the La Nina is there, it's likely to continue, and it would constitute a relatively rare third La Nina in a row. With that in mind, let's look at our climate outlooks. First, for September of 2022, the left frame shows the temperature outlooks for the contiguous United States, and as the same story we've been seeing for the western states, above average temperatures is deemed the most likely scenario for September as a whole. Only the southern tier of states and southern plains has some risk of being below average for September as a whole. The right frame shows the monthly precipitation outlook issued at the end of August. As we can see, for the northern tier of states, the Pacific Northwest, the northern plains up to the western part of the Great Lakes, below average precipitation is seen as the most likely scenario for September as a whole. Above average precipitation being seen as the most likely scenario for the Gulf Coast, the southern plains, and sections of the desert Southwest. The seasonal outlook for October, November, December of 2022, the left frame shows the seasonal temperature outlook. Equal chances being the most likely scenario for the northern tier of states and much of the Pacific Northwest for the 3-month period, meaning that Climate Prediction Center forecasters are simply not issuing a forecast for those areas because they don't feel confident in any tools that they have to make such a projection for those areas. For the desert Southwest, the southern plains, and much of the rest of the United States, above average temperatures are deemed the most likely scenario for the 3-month period ending at the end of 2022. Now, the right frame shows the seasonal precipitation outlook for that same 3-month period, and for Washington and northern Idaho and western Montana, above average precipitation is seen as the most likely scenario for that 3-month cumulative precipitation total. Equal chances for Oregon, much of Idaho, and the northern plains, and below average precipitation seems to be the most likely scenario for California, the Great Basin, the desert Southwest, the southern plains, and much of the Gulf Coast states as well. This is in keeping with what is typically seen during La Nina conditions going into a La Nina winter. The significant fire potential outlook for September of 2022. The main risk of costly or so-called significant fires is estimated to be above historical average in September for PSAs in Central Oregon and in Central Washington, as well as PSA NW04 in Southwest Oregon as well, for sections of the Northwest Great Basin and Northern California and much of the Northern Rockies. Elsewhere, normal significant fire potential risk is expected. For the October through December 2022 outlooks, the risk of large, costly, or so-called significant fires will drop back to normal levels, which is low risk, for the Northwest geographic area in that 3-month period, October through December. Elsewhere in the West, elevated risk in Northern California progressively diminishes to Southern California by December. The next outlook will be issued around October 1st, 2022.